Hey, podcast listening people, welcome to another exciting episode of B2B Mentors podcast. I'm bringing you the top subject matter experts, marketing leaders, CMOs, business celebrities to help you grow your brand, grow your sales, grow your leadership efforts, and ultimately just crush it with what you're doing. If you find any value out of this, which given the guest I have for you today, I can guarantee it. Do me a tiny favor. Make sure you share this and go to any platform where B2B Mentors is. We're on all your favorite audio platforms. And please leave a review. That helps for other people to find the show too. And I am pumped for today's episode because we're going to nerd out about buying process, the disconnect, stats, data, and like everything us nerdy marketers really like to get into. So with that, please welcome my friend Allyson Havener to the show. Good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Connor. Great to be here.
With the amazing art. Now, is this local art behind you? Is this found art? Did you find this on Etsy somewhere? Or did you just find this on Amazon? Because I really do like it.
Oh my gosh, thank you. No, I bought it in Bali on a yoga retreat, and we left the yoga retreat, and there was like a artist kind of commune area that we went to, and so I bought it off the wall. Had him. I didn't even have him take it off the frame. I was like, just bubble wrap it. I'll take it on like the plane, which was also a fiasco, but. So I love it. It's actually
How the
about
heck did you get that on the plane back and like
just a
all
lot
of
of
that?
smiling and and asking really nicely.
That's
Sugar
amazing.
goes a long way, right?
And that's what makes you a great marketer. And with that, for those of you who are wondering, Allyson leads the marketing strategy at TrustRadius across all functions, including demand gen, PR, product, partner marketing. She's driven to establish TrustRadius as the platform where buying decisions are made. Allyson brings experience and expertise in hyper growth marketing from previous roles at LiveRamp, enterprise SaaS company, in her spare time, which we could do a whole podcast on this because I need to get back into yoga, but she teaches yoga
Yes.
and finds anything to do outdoors, which we were just talking about before we recorded. And Allyson was also a ballerina in Dubai, of like all places, and has also graduated from University of California. So we got to start there. How do you go from ballerina to badass marketing executive?
It's actually a really easy like jump because I feel like, when you think about what you're doing on like the stage, you're essentially selling yourself. You have to have like that poise, that discipline, and you really have to put yourself out there. And I think a lot of marketers, a lot of their marketing strategy, what they put out into market is really a reflection of them as well. So when I started my career, kind of in the SaaS technology space, I knew I wanted to go into marketing. I really enjoyed the challenge. I think marketing is probably one of the biggest areas of focus for a company, but it can also come with a lot of it's the most externally facing. So it can just come with so much pressure. A lot of people think that they're marketers, right? Everybody thinks they're a marketer, but there's very few that are actually really, really good at it. And so you have to really take in a lot from other people across the organization, synthesize that, and really establish your strategy, stick to it, and really kind of ruthlessly execute it.
I got to know the Dubai story, though. I wanted to go to Dubai, but tell us just a little, just briefly, like how'd you end up doing ballet there?
Yeah, it was kind of serendipitous. Ended up there through some like family friends, was visiting. And I was originally going to just kind of travel around, and I had danced my whole life, and I had ran into some people at like a coffee shop. They were talking about this new ballet, and there wasn't really a ballet scene there yet or a dance scene, and they were starting this company. And so anyway, so I went and auditioned. And I'm also trained in multiple disciplines. I do tap and contemporary. So I auditioned, got into the ballet company, stayed there for 2 years. And then I also taught as well. So on my like side hustle, I was teaching as part of the company too. And I loved it. It was awesome. It was a great way to go to a part of the world and really experience it. And I would like have this complete culture shock. Actually, when I came back to California, I had like reverse culture shock. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to like live in the US anymore, because it's very, very different, but it was just one of the most amazing experiences.
I've heard that's so crazy. And I think everyone needs to experience that, living out of the country for a little bit. I did Spain for my, I lived there for a little bit and travel a lot. So it seems like we definitely have that in common. And I just came up with a great idea too.
Yes.
We together are going to put together a marketing leader mastermind, but we're going to do a yoga class
Yes.
for a group of marketers and bring some marketers to network, but also we'll do some yoga together. How do you like it? Are you sold?
That's a great idea. And it like, that was like my perfect transition, like coming back to the States, and I was kind of done with my ballet career. And so I got into yoga, and it's just been amazing to kind of keep your body in that agile state.
There's a big connect. Like when I was really, really doing yoga consistently, I think this goes a great on mindset. People are like, where are we going with this? But hear me out. Hear me out. The flow, the creativity, just by like moving your body that way, I don't think people realize the connection and how powerful it can be to like boost creativity, productivity, focus, like ADD me over here, but like yoga is incredibly powerful for that.
Yeah, it's all about that connection between your mind and your body and your breath. And I think it's really your base. It's your foundation for how you show up, whatever it may be. And so when you have kind of the control and the connection of those elements of like who you are, you're just always going to be able to put your best self forward and really put, to your point, that creativity, that thought process. And like, how many times during your day do you just kind of like forget to take like a deep breath and like, it's all going to be okay?
Like 5 seconds ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, oh wait,
Before
I'm
this
supposed to breathe. That works. VP of marketing, for TrustRadius, how did you land in that position, and what attracted you into this, the company as well?
So I landed at TrustRadius. So Vinay Bhagat, who's the CEO, reached out to me. I had been reaching out to some people in my network. And so we started the conversation. And so previously I was at a company called LiveRamp, a big kind of ad tech company, had been there for 8 years. So I'd been there from like early startup, like 40-person company, to when we eventually IPO'd in 2018. So I'd been there for a very long time, growing the marketing department. I was one of the second marketing hires. And I think you always get to that part in your career where you're ready to rebuild something. I also wanted to own the entire marketing team. So I had reported into the CMO at LiveRamp, and I hadn't owned the entire marketing team. So I was ready to take on that challenge. And I think that's something, a lot of people in their careers, that you really see a lot of people that excel when they're over their skis. And that's definitely something that I've known about myself, is that I have to be out of my comfort zone. Otherwise I just get complacent. And so I really wanted to take on a new challenge. And so Vinay brought the opportunity to me. And it just seemed like a couple things. The culture just seemed like amazing. The other thing is that the vision of like where the company is going and really helping, mend the trust gap that's happening right now in the technology world. Like, coming from SaaS, I know that buyers are more skeptical than they've ever been, right? And there's so much technology out there that are all saying the same thing. So it's really hard to differentiate which one's going to be the best technology for you. There's kind of these one size fits all, like analyst reports and things like that, that doesn't really translate to your business. And it's hard to take something that feels kind of the one size fits all and fit it to who you are, your business goals, and what you're trying to achieve. So I really aligned with where the business was going and the vision for the technology space, and bringing back that kind of trusted element and helping marketers really differentiate themselves, helping challengers, disruptor brands, also break into markets. And so I just felt like I was really aligned with like the vision, which I think is really important to whatever company you're going to and the role that you're going to, is that you're super aligned with the vision and values of the company.
And so for those listening, like marketers are the main marketing leaders. That is the main suite that you're marketing to.
Yes. And I love marketing to marketers. It's so fun.
It is very fun. I can definitely second that. And there is a big challenge there that there's like 7,000 technology tools in the suite nowadays. Is that right? Am I about correct on that? Last time I checked, it was like around the 7,000 mark
Per tech
for tech for your Martech stack.
Yeah, I mean, it honestly has completely exploded, and I think it all depends on a few things. Kind of the sophistication of your marketing, the marketing team that you have built. Because I think a lot of what's happening is people are starting to specialize in certain pieces of technology. If you remember back in the early Marketo days, right, having somebody that was an expert in Marketo was huge, and that's a huge resume builder. So I think when you think about the technology stack, it's really thinking about, okay, what's the team I have in place that's actually going to manage it and be able to, again, you're always laddering up into your KPIs as a marketing team and the bottom line of the company. So what's that team? And then what's like the technology that we need around that as well? It's like the classic, what is it? People, process, technology.
Mm-hmm.
Because I see what a lot of people do is, okay, great, there's like this new shiny tool that we can use, and then you don't really have the team or the process to implement it, and it kind of just sits on the shelf, and then you just wasted X amount of money on a piece of technology. And so that's what
Yeah.
we see. And so,
Most CMOs, just to not to cut you off, but like most CMOs I've talked to, interviewed, they're like, how do I get rid of more of this tech stack
yeah.
that I have been like trying to add stuff in this year?
Right, exactly. And so you're seeing this, and we see this in a lot of our data, is the mass consolidation. And people want to use less tools, but they want them to be super, super effective with it. And so you're kind of constantly balancing this. You don't want to get like this black box technology that you think it's doing what you want, but it really isn't, and you're not 100% sure. And then the balance of like best in class, because I do think that there's a lot of best in class technologies out there that integrate really well together, or your systems can talk to each other. So it's definitely the balance of that consolidation, but also getting that best in class and what's really right for your business.
So one of the things that I was really, really excited about too is not only just, hey, we can help you match your tech stack, but in your guys' case, and I love this idea that you brought to the table in terms of marketing, are the reports that you put together. And I think I may have written it. I don't know, one of the two. I did something with it.
Yes.
It may have been correct or incorrect, but you're helping them understand the buying disconnect.
Right.
And so what does that mean? How are you getting that? Like, give a little high level on that, and then let's like break that down for the marketers that are listening.
Yeah. So we do this annual report every year. So this will be our 7th annual report that we're releasing in June. And really the idea is that we're evaluating the disconnect between the way buyers want to buy and the way like sales and marketing actually go to market. And so we survey we have millions of buyers that come to our site on a monthly basis. They're evaluating technology, they're looking at pricing, they're comparing you to your competitors, they're saving a bunch of their research, they're collaborating with the whole buying committee. So there's all this data that we have that we can actually assess, do some analysis, and bring that to our marketers and our sales teams to help them, again, bridge that gap and close that gap between and meet their buyers like where they are. And I think that's super important, is when you look at trends in the way the buying cycle has changed in B2B, it's mirroring essentially what already happened in the B2C space. And so you have a couple of things that we see is, one, over 65% of the buying population is millennial or Gen Z. And so all of these people are digital natives. They're used to having information readily available at their fingertips. They rely on social and their communities and word of mouth. Again, if you go back to like what I said earlier on them being super skeptical, imagine, when you think about your marketing and your sales team telling them something, that's, they're always going to be slightly questioning that, right? However, if they hear it from their peer and they hear it from, your customers, that's going to have much more weight than just your marketing or just your sales and your pitch deck, et cetera. So
You
I
do
think,
more research, right? Like you'll see an ad and then you'll go follow their social and then you'll forget about them. And then 3 months down the line, you see the content they're putting out, social proof, and then you go back and look at their website. Like there's so many more
yeah,
roundabout hoops that are happening to like get to that actual sales consultation stage.
right. And that's what I think marketers' mindset has to change, because there's a few things that are happening. We've as marketers, you're constantly trying to prove what you're doing is impacting the bottom line. So every CEO wants to be like, oh, this website view led to this pipeline. And it's really hard to do that. And I don't think it's necessary, because the buyer's journey is not linear, right? And a lot of that's happening anonymously. So I think with where we're going today is that the marketer has to really think about that demand gen creation and then capturing it eventually. But they have to understand that buyers are going to look at, a million different things. They're going to talk to their peers. Maybe they're not even in market anymore. And then they convert, 6 months later when they're like, oh yeah, I do have a problem. Oh yeah, that brand will solve it for me. Great, right? And that accelerates your deal cycle, and that helps your win rates, that helps overall retention. So I think that marketers and their overall strategy and mindset has to think about the way buyers are buying these days and how it's happening anonymously. It's not a linear process, and they have to be wherever their buyers are, where their eyeballs are. And be constantly influencing them. You're hearing a lot about dark social and how important that is, and interacting with people, but your competitors are doing this. Like, I think there's some really, really prominent brands out there that do this really, really well. However, what is missing, I think, is that brand piece, where a lot of marketers are like, great, like if I'm not interacting with my prospects on all of these different touch points, then I'm just going to focus on the ones that are in market. And you're kind of missing out on all that demand creation that's going to help you, 6 months from now, 9 months.
And you not doing it means your competitors are absolutely going to do it for you.
Right.
And not only for your prospects nowadays, but also your existing clients, which are now nobody respects contracts anymore.
Right.
Actually, and so like they'll just up and leave if they feel like there's someone else who has that trust, the validity, the social proof, and you're not the ones out there sharing it.
Right. Social proof and that influence on your customers is just as important from acquisition to retention, because people are going to, like you just said, brand loyalty. And there's so many options out there. Like, brand loyalty is really, really hard in the B2B space right now, because all of the technology markets are so oversaturated with different technologies. So if you don't have really good, and this is kind of when you're thinking of your customer journey and all the touch points within that, if you don't have really good onboarding, if you're not proving ROI, you're not working with your customer success team to make sure that they're realizing the value, and when they need to champion, your technology and make sure that you're retaining them, are you giving them the tools to do that? I think that's really, really important. Brand loyalty is very, very hard in the B2B space right now.
Very hard. Well, I think it's always been more difficult than the consumer, because you don't have ranting, raving customers, right? You have like, I'm buying a technology solution, I'm buying something from an agency, I'm buying data, whatever it is. It's like, it is very hard. It's very, very hard to build a community around in the B2B world as well.
Yeah. And the brands, like I said, there are really prominent brands that are doing that, and they're building that community. And it's really about making sure that your customers are successful. And so, especially if you're one of those, like you're trying to push like a new category of technology you're kind of pioneering it. It's like, okay, well, how are you going to educate and essentially build your kind of ideal buyer? And so you have to really invest in that kind of like where I'm talking about more of demand creation. It's like that educational content, that thought leadership, aligning with other influencers in the space is going to be really important because you're essentially conditioning your next buyer and that like ideal customer profile. And so you can create a community around that. And when you do, then those people are going to they're going to be like, great, like I turned to this company because it's almost like they were leaning in, they were walking you through that process. And again, that will then create more brand loyalty as well in the long run.
What else have you found that's been rather surprising as of this last year in terms of disconnect from what us marketers are thinking and sales leaders on go-to-market and what the market themselves are actually, how they're preferring to be solicited,
Right.
marketed to, communicated with?
Right. I think, and this isn't surprising, but it's like, it's the hardest thing to change. And it's around like cold calling, BDR. So all the marketers that are out there that own the BDR team, we look at intent signals. We're looking at lead scoring. We're doing all of these things to see who's going to have a higher propensity to talk to our BDRs. However, they're still doing cold calls. They're still doing cold outreach. Our salespeople are still doing that. And that's the number one thing that buyers do not want. And it's not even that they don't want it, it's a deterrent. And so I feel as though it's hard to change that because you do, like, it is that bottom funnel transaction that you do thousands and thousands of emails and you book that 8%.
And it still works and you still get that deal and that's a tricky kind of double-edged sword.
Right. But the reason why we keep doing it is because it's the easiest thing to say, we did this, we booked this meeting, this turned to pipeline, that was close one. Yep. Well, what you don't realize is like what it does to your brand, to the thousands of other people that you've been reaching out to when they weren't really in market and and I think, our BDR team, we really try to hone in on what's a value that we can bring somebody, even if like, instead of going right for the throat, right for the meeting, it's like, we have all of this amazing, useful data that marketers can use, salespeople can use. Let's give that to them. Let's give them this data. Let's give them this kind of competitive analysis. And again, kind of going back to like why it's fun to market to marketers, because essentially it's like, would I open this email? Would I listen to us? And I think so I think the rules of engagement when it comes to like sales and marketing and meeting buyers and engaging with them on their terms, it's really, really hard for us because again, demand creation and all the KPIs that go through that. So if you're looking at social followers, social engagement, website traffic, time on page, like all of these kind of like, they feel, I get into a board meeting or I get into a discussion with my CEO and I know he thinks these are fluffy, but, and they're not, we really have to push that. So much of your buyers are interacting with you and you don't even know it. And you maybe not even able to track it. But it's worth investing in because again, you're going to feel the hurt if you don't 6 months, 9 months from now. So it's all about kind of that long-term gain.
A year from like people who, especially when COVID came around, who did not, aggressively start to adopt social, they're kicking themselves now. And there's still so many late adopters. It's so surprising.
Or I feel like a lot of people, they use social as like a megaphone instead of an interacting tool.
100%.
And I think that's also, it's like, sure, invest in social, but how are you using that as a point of interaction versus just this megaphone? And there's a balance of both. But I think you need to really think of it as as a tool to engage and interact.
Did you get any data in terms of like webinars?
Yeah. So when we looked at, one of the pieces, and we're doing more of a deep dive into our June report this year, but how influential different kind of resources are for buyers. And the funny thing around like webinars and just anything that you're creating from your marketing materials has slightly dropped and keeps continuing to drop in terms of how influential it is in the buying decision. And I think that that's not to say that don't do it. It's more to say that you need that social proof and that customer third-party forums, that customer proof, because again, they're going to take it all in, but how influential it is to their actual purchase decision is also really important. And so I always think about when I get asked, like, what's this, there's no silver bullet in marketing. It's about thinking through your channel optimization. It's thinking about that consistent story that you're telling about telling about your brand across those channels. And doing that, again, I think doing that in a consistent way, and it's so, so important. So when I think about like webinars and content, it's like those are all very, very important, but it's also layering on making sure that you're part of third-party forums. I know a lot of marketers that are like in cybersecurity or they're selling to developers. They're not looking at a webinar, right? They're in third-party forums and they're talking about the different
expand on that a little bit. How would you define third-party forums?
So like a lot of one of our actually they created one of their forums. So one of our customers, like essentially they created like a developer community, and they're in there talking about, the different kind of open source code that they can get. They're talking about the code that they're getting and the product that they're using versus like the free version versus the subscribe version, help desk type of situation. So they created their own third-party forum. Also, there's like, there's the Reddits of the world, there's the Quoras of the world, there's all these different areas, and social is huge, right? Where people are interacting with one another, trying to get best practices. And again, they want to hear from their peers. So I think the more you can create that peer-to-peer interaction, and also, I think on social, it's super important if you're not putting your brand like right in the forefront. Right? Like there's a lot of, we work with a lot of customer marketers. A lot of customer marketers want to just talk to each other, talk about the programs that they're running, get all these really creative ideas. And so we created a community for that, and we're not really involved. It's more of just customer marketers talking to each other and then us helping where we can. But it's like creating it's not, even if it's not like an actual third-party forum, it's going back to that kind of community aspect that maybe you're supporting, but you're not having your brand completely at the forefront and dominating the conversation.
That's also why I was so curious on the webinars, because I like to give people the benefit of a doubt, but 99% of webinars out there are just big sales pitches.
Right.
I have one I'm putting on tomorrow, but I don't call it a webinar. I call it a live virtual, and it's an experience, right? Like, I'm going to bring some entertainment to it. It's going to be fun. We're going to learn, and there's no sales pitch in it. And it worked incredibly well for us and other companies I've seen doing that, of like almost surprising your market that you're not trying to pitch or sell something, but you are truly trying to give them an experience, trying to give them entertainment, and trying to, help them solve their problems, be engaged.
I listened to your intro song for this podcast, and I was pumped up. So that that sounds like entertainment. But yeah, I totally agree. I think, like I said, it's always about trying to give people the tools to be successful at their job. And the more that your brand can help them be successful, the more they're going to turn to you for that thought leadership. And that really helps establish you as a leader within the organization. Really early in my career, there was a lot going on kind of obviously with like data privacy, GDPR, CCPA. And one thing that we did, and this was at LiveRamp, was we created just a complete like learning hub around the data privacy laws. We brought the person in that wrote the legislation for CCPA to do a Q&A. And again, like our product was part of the solution, but that was never part of the conversation. It was more about bringing this educational content where people are like, this is this really new concept. This is going to change our whole kind of way we aggregate, store, process data. And like, let's be a resource for people. Yeah. And again, that builds trust. That builds trust with your audience. And then also having your customers, right? Your customers up there, being able to talk and creating a platform for them to highlight all the great work that they're doing. That, again, that builds trust that you're willing to invest in them and make them successful. Because at the end of the day, any amazing brand that's doing really well out there is making their customers look good.
100%. That's why, like look at the format we're doing now. I think podcasts are so underutilized for B2B. I mean, you can reach out to almost any customer, potential client, instead of saying, hey, I want to sell you something. Let's build a true relationship. Never know where it goes. I mean, we literally just brought a client in 2 weeks ago from a guest that I had on a year ago who referred me to this client. And it's like, wow, the trust was there just from having that kind of rapport and platform and ability to reach out in a way to build a relationship that's beneficial for them, beneficial for you. It's mutually, kind of interest. And so, I don't know where I was going with that, but
Well,
it made me think about it.
that was a perfect example of, again, that demand creation where a year ago you had this person on your podcast, you're getting to know them, you're also like learning a ton about their marketing strategy and the way they think. You keep in contact even though it's a year later. When they're in market, guess who they thought about? They thought about Connor, and they're like, yes, like that's who I want to help me and with my content strategy, etc. And so again, it's like when you're thinking about that demand creation, don't let the pendulum swing so far where you're just like on those bottom funnel metrics. Did this lead to a meeting? Did this, can this be attributed to our pipeline, et cetera, this quarter? Because again, you're building those long lasting relationships and you're building a trusted brand that's going to withstand the others that are not paying attention and not investing in that.
We should probably do a whole nother podcast together on that topic in particular. I think is so key. Like the disconnect between leadership and marketing leadership as well. And how could maybe some of the data you're putting out there, help create buy-in and access. I did have one last before we wrap up, and I want to give you a chance to give some shout outs, but the 65% of millennials, Gen Z that are in the buying committee, the other 45%, did I do my math right?
No, 35.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I didn't pass math class.
I'm surprised I got that right.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It is 35%. Damn, oh man, I'm so depressed I didn't get that. The other 35%, where are they spending their time and preferring to consume?
So when we actually did the analysis, the trends that we saw and that we've been talking about transcend generations. So even though like older generations may not have grown up in kind of the digitally sound world that we've been in for years, they still have the same buying preferences because again, like the B2C world has conditioned them in the same way that it's conditioned us. And so when we look at kind of continuing to look at demographics, when we also look at, mid-market and enterprise, it's the same. And I think that's actually really, really important because we work mostly with the enterprise and mid-market. That's kind of our bread and butter. That's what TrustRadius is known for, the audience that we work with because of our content being so in depth and vetted.
And most of your clients are they're marketing consumer, right?
Right. So most of our customers that are marketers and like they're vendors from technology in the enterprise and mid-market. And then most of our buyers that come and want to research technology on our site come from mid-market and the enterprise as well. And so
their companies sell consumer products and services for the most part.
They're mostly selling technology. They're mostly selling software.
Yeah, the supply side for tech, but the marketers who are trying to figure out the tech, are they
it honestly depends. It's B2C and B2B for sure.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I see where you're going. Yeah, it's a mixture for sure. It just depends. Like we have a lot of B2C buyers that come that are building their tech stack that come from like, the consumer world. Yes.
How are you? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and so when you look at company size, when you look at the generational, we're still getting the same results in terms of like what they want and how they want to interact with the vendor.
How are you competing in the G2 comparison out there? Like what's your perspective on that as a marketer?
So, what's really interesting is that I was actually a customer of G2 before I came to TrustRadius. But like I said earlier around like technology and process, we didn't have anybody managing it. It was kind of on a credit card. And I don't even remember what we paid. We never generated any reviews. We didn't do anything really with the platform, and it just sat on the shelf. And I think that when we look at TrustRadius, and another reason why I went there, they're really interested in partnering with you and making sure that you're using the customer voice. It's not just about being on a hamster kind of wheel and just generating reviews. It's about, hey, giving my buyers information when they want it, and then using that information in across my marketing and sales. So we were talking about how important it is to have the customer proof points, to have that customer voice front and center. I think a big thing at TrustRadius is that we help you utilize that content to its fullest potential. So we have a lot of customers that take all the content off TrustRadius. They use it across their website, across social, across their sales decks, their prospecting. And I think that's a huge, huge differentiator because the content is so in depth, you actually want to use it. And most of our content's like over 400 words. And if you look at most of other review platforms kind of across the industry, it's maybe 50. So it's like content that you actually want to use.
So this is, if I recall correctly, this is coming out in June. Is that right? Your next
yes, so our
report?
Big report, yes. The B2B buying disconnect. This will be our 7th annual report. Comes out at the beginning.
The link was too big to plug into here, so you have to like go to TrustRadius.com, and I'm sure it's easy to navigate and find there.
Yes, very easy.
You know what I think, and I'm going to get your buy-in here, and I'm going to close you on this while we're recording for the audience. I think we should put together some sort of mastermind Q&A after the report comes in and bring in a whole room of marketers virtually, and together we can strategize. They can ask you questions, and we can make a really cool experience out of it.
Yeah, I love it. And we'll bring our VP of research, which is another reason I went to TrustRadius. There's this whole amazing research department that helps us essentially curate and analyze all of this great data. And so we can just pick her brain and ask her a million questions.
That would be a good time. I think people would really enjoy that. That would be a lot of fun. On that note, Allyson, obviously visit TrustRadius.com, and then anything else, you're talking to a room full of B2B marketers, CMOs, business development leaders, anything else you want to impart before we wrap up here?
We talked a little bit about that, like executive buy-in. And I think one person, if you're having trouble getting buy-in across your executive team, really lean into like your CRO, your head of sales to help tell that story for you. Really lean in also to the CFO. I think that marketers usually get a little intimidated by the CFO, or maybe there's not that great relationship there.
But at least they know math better than I do.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but if you can really align, that's one thing that I've learned over time is really aligning with your CFO and helping them tell your story, and is a game changer. So I think with that alignment, and then you can get your CEO, your board, and everybody else on board.
Amazing. This has been great. I definitely want to do a part 2 and dive into some other stuff here. But with that, Allyson, best way for people to find you, follow you, get into contact with you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm super responsive, so feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Super grateful for you, for your time. Everyone, make sure you go follow Allyson, connect, go check out TrustRadius.com for all my fellow marketing friends, and check out the podcast. It's everywhere you like to listen. Much love to you, my friends. Make it great, and we'll see you.